I've been thinking about this for a while. It's been something that's been on my mind for a while, and I thought I would just spend my opening remarks talking about it because there's way too much, and I am to blame for this. I am guilty of it myself. There's way too much shit talking on these streams, right? We love to criticize socialist and communist groups for what they're not doing, what they're doing wrong. And we have to do that, right? Our whole thing is out of the movement to the masses. We're going to get it right. We're going to go to the masses. We're going to break with the synthetic left, all of that, right? And so it's necessary. We have to make clear our differences. That's true. But we've done that. We've done that. If you watch these streams, you know our differences. However, recently I've been going over examples of people from the past, communist groups from the past, doing things right. And I've gotten to the point where I want to look for what other forces are doing right that I can learn from rather than simply what they are doing wrong. It is very easy to naysay. It is very easy to critique. But when you're doing it and the pressure's on you, it's much harder. You know, it's much harder. It's much harder when it's you in the cockpit and it's you actually doing it. It is much easier to sit there and say, yeah, well, if that was me, I would have blah, 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 blah. It's very easy to do. But if you're the one actually doing it, it can be much harder. And, there are all kinds of different communist groups in the United States that we're very critical of. And we admit that the American communist movement has largely failed to capture the imagination of the broad masses of people. It's remained isolated, and now it's being used as foot soldiers of the wokes as they set the stage for a new world war. And wokeism has completely reinvented Marxism to be a pro-imperialist degrowth ideology. But what the wokeists have done is they've taken the worst elements of American Marxist groups and they've packaged them and commodified them. But what they haven't taken with them was the good parts. All right? And I showed you a clip the other night of Fred Halstead, the leader of the Socialist Workers' Party, and his TV interviews from the 1960s. And we saw the good parts, the parts the synthetic left is not taking with them. And we talk about that. One reason that we talk about the history of the Communist Party on these streams a lot is because the Communist Party, for all of their faults, they're no fans of me, and I tried to work with them, but they're not friendly, to us. Despite all their faults, there's something to be admired about the Communist Party, because even today, the Communist Party is held to a higher standard of political professionalism than other Marxist groups because they were the party that was aligned with the Soviet Union. Their writing is much more clear. If you read something by Gus Hall, or even if you read something by Sam Webb or whoever that guy is now, the guy who's their leader now, Joe Sims, I think, it's much more clear and to the point because they were held to a standard of political professionalism. They had to act more like a serious political party. While various Trotskyite and Maoist groups were writing incomprehensible philosophical screeds, if you read a position paper by the Communist Party, it might be wrong, but you could make heads or tails of it. It made sense. There was a logic to what they were saying, and it was written clearly and coherently. That's a strength that they had, and that's something we should be learning from. So tonight, I am going to talk about the strength of a figure. He's now quite old. He's not a young man anymore. I'm going to talk about the strength of Bob Avakian. And the RCP is not the group. They're not the group. They are totally involved in the Stop Trump movement. And this is the Revolutionary Communist Party. They're a Maoist communist group in the United States. They're very visible. They have bookstores around the country. They used to, called Revolution Books. But if you look at their history, there's something that we can learn from them. All right. Their leader is a guy named Bob Avakian, and he's almost 80 years old. And he's been doing this since he was a young man. And it's a communist group, a small communist sect in America. And they're still around. During the 1970s, there were many, many, many different organizations. that were attempting to build a new communist party in the United States that was aligned with China and had more revolutionary energy. There were many different groups, and almost all of those groups are gone. The October League was a big group. They're gone. The Communist Workers' Party, they were a big group. They're gone. The Communist Labor Party, started by someone that I've learned a lot from, Nelson Peary, they're gone. But the Revolutionary Communist Party is here. They're still around. And despite all of their flaws and their bad politics, the Revolutionary Communist Party has a lot to criticize. But why are they still around? Again, we can criticize these groups' flaws all day, but I want you to, it took me years to finally understand them. I was briefly around them when I was college age. When I was like 19, I was briefly around them. And years later, I was reading a history of the communist movement in America, and I was reading about their history. I was reading some of the documents that was published, and I had a moment, and I said, boom, now I get it. Now I get it. Now I get it. Now I get it. And recognizing this strength that this group has. This group is bad in so many ways. They endorsed Joe Biden in the last election. They're calling Russia imperialist. They're wrong on so many points. But there's a reason that in the 1970s, they surged to thousands and thousands of members. And then in the 1980s, when China's politics switched and all of that, they kept going. And even in the 90s and even in the early 2000s, when I was young, they had a lot of strength. There's a reason for it. There's something to be said for them. There's a strength that they have that we can learn from. And tonight, I am going to reveal to you that strength that the Revolutionary Communist Party had. Despite all of their flaws, despite all of their shortcomings over the years, there was one thing that they got. And when I discovered this strength that they have, when I discovered this, I learned an important lesson. And so tonight, if there's anyone from the Revolutionary Communist Party watching, I am going to point to what I think is the strength and has been the strength of your organization over the years. And it's something that anyone who is serious about building a communist organization or communist movement in the United States can learn from. And this might sound like inside baseball, but this is something we can learn from. So I'm going to start, just in case people don't know who I'm talking about, the Revolutionary Communist Party, the RCP. This was a Maoist communist group that was very big in the 70s. They're still around. They're very small, but centered around Bob Avakian, their leader. This is Bob Avakian, the leader of the Revolutionary Communist Party. This is just a clip. This is just so you know who we're talking about. This is just a quick introduction to who they are, who the man is, who the organization is.
Well, my life was, just typical. Typical what life is like for the oppressed, for black people under this system and stuff. And it was, early. That's what my life was about. Early was, a lot of it could be characterized by eluding and combating the police and seeing like others, doing like the same thing or even like being like killed by them or what have you. A lot of like, just, terror and brutality. When the Panthers hit the scene, it was something like they were speaking to my every feeling. Young girls as well as these young guys used to come there with Panthers. Young girls, 15, 16 years old. And, some young guys, some of them was a little older than that. They used to come by my house with their Panther papers. And that's what they would tell me. They say, nigga, you drafted into the Black Panther Party. You ain't got no more say-so in this. We used to have study classes and groups, and we'd be reading the Red Book, and we had to, discuss it and break it down and explain it, trying to really understand some of the stuff that Mao Zedong was talking about. Going to those kind of meetings, I found that really, and being able to be part of that process, something that's was really exciting. And we used to be out on the streets at night sometimes, this stalking I guess what we call it stalking the stalkers and stuff, and the police and these the enforcers of this way of life. Bob Avakian was one of the first white revolutionaries to come out in support of the Panthers, and you see him at they had rallies at the Oakland Auditorium where I think that was a 67 or 68, Rap Brown speaking, I think James Foreman and Stokely Carmichael and Bobby Seals and Bob Avakian, the only white revolutionary brother, to be on the stage speaking with these black militants. Eldridge Cleaver, I guess, had offered him secret membership into the Black Panther Party.
And let me say one thing to the white people in the audience. Now, you know, Bobby has been saying for a long time, we will not fight racism with racism. We refuse to stoop to the level of a racist to hate somebody because of the color of his skin. Well, that's fine. But I see a lot of white people walking around and say, oh, good. Now the Black Panther Party don't hate me. I can go on about my business. That's a cop-out, and if you act like that, the Black Panther Party will hate you, not because you're white, but because you ain't taking care of business to organize other people, teach them the need to support the black liberation movement led by the Black Panther Party as a strong, fearless voice against American imperialism, and to link up with all the people in Vietnam, in China, in Angola, in Latin America, and everywhere else who are standing shoulder to shoulder to drive this vicious beast out of the way and out of the pages of history.
So that's
people say, yeah, well,
here he is,
okay, but how do we know
79.
that you won't be like others before you? How do we know you and your party won't be like the other groups that have come along in this country? Others? How do we know that you won't sell out and revolution won't be betrayed, either before it even happens or after it, when you just try to turn it into your own thing for your own benefit? Well, I'll say this first of all. I myself, speaking for myself personally, have been fighting this system politically for 15 years. I've been a revolutionary for 12 and a conscious communist for 10 or more, and I got no intention of being or doing anything else as long as I'm alive and for as long as I can contribute to the struggle, and they're going to have to kill me to stop me from doing that, and we're going to fight to see that that doesn't happen either. It's not just a question that we have revolutionary determination. We've fought to get to the point where we are, to develop the revolutionary line that we have, to have the grasp and application of the revolutionary theory that we have. And there's going to be many sharp struggles to safeguard, to protect, defend that, and to apply and enrich and deepen in the process of leading not just thousands, but ultimately millions of people. And finally, I'm going to put it back to you in answering this question. If you want this party to remain on the revolutionary road, if you want this party to continue to be a sharp weapon of the working class and oppressed people for revolution and not turn into another dagger in the people's back, if you want that to happen, then you got a role to play in that. Because if you want to be emancipated, you're going to have to emancipate yourself. Ain't no saviors coming from heaven. Ain't no pope going to do it for you. Goddamn Secretary drowning Kennedy ain't going to do it either. We're going to have to emancipate ourselves if we want to be emancipated, and that's the only way it can be done anyway.
Yeah, so that's Bob Avakian. That's the Revolutionary Communist Party. That's clips from when they were strong, right? They've obviously deteriorated and had a lot of, losses in membership and decline in influence since. But 1970s, they were probably one of the biggest communist groups in the United States. They were up there with the Communist Party USA. They were up there with the CPUSA. And they were probably the biggest of the groups that were aligned with China. Why? What was special about the Revolutionary Communist Party? What about them? What was it about them that gave them strength? Well, it all goes back to 1969. In 1969, this guy, let me write down the super chat question. And thank you, Johnny Blaze. Very good. Thank you, Johnny. Goes back to 1969. 1969, in the United States, there was a huge upsurge of protests against the Vietnam War. 1968, you had every major city in the United States go up in flames after the death of Martin Luther King Jr. Later that year, you had the Democrat National Convention. You had riots in the streets because they nominated a candidate who supported the Vietnam War. And so the college students who opposed the Vietnam War were like rioting and fighting the police outside the convention. And, Columbia University was shut down by protests. And, 1969, the country's in an upsurge. However, at that point, it was the black community that was up in arms. And it was the college students, the young college students who didn't want to fight in Vietnam, who were getting interested in radical ideas. But one of those college students, I think he wasn't a college student at that point. He worked for Ramparts magazine. He worked for a radical magazine in the Bay Area called Ramparts. A guy named Bob Avakian, who was a supporter of the Black Panthers, a white guy. His father was a prominent judge, a federal judge, and was from a wealthy family in California. He wrote for Ramparts magazine. He was a journalist. And he had the idea he realized that the college kids by themselves and the black community by themselves weren't going to make a revolution. That they alone couldn't make a revolution. But then he noticed in another part of California called Richmond County. And anyone's ever been to California, it's not in San Francisco, but it's near San Francisco. It's near the Bay Area. There's something called Richmond County. Something called Richmond County. And Richmond County is a very working class, low income area in California. It is certainly not a stronghold of wealth. Richmond County. Let's look it up. Let's read about Richmond County. I don't want to give you any inaccurate information, and I haven't spent that much time in my life in Richmond County. Richmond, California, right? Or it's a city, not a county. It's part of Contra Costa County, right? It's Richmond, California, by the ocean, right? It's a working class area, right? Richmond, California. What's the average income in Richmond, California? Let's find out. What's the average income? Average income in Richmond, California. The average income is $32,000 a year. That's not the highest percentage of income. Richmond is in deep trouble. And in Richmond, California, far from the Bay Area, 1969, there was an oil workers' strike. The oil workers of Richmond, California went on strike. And Bob Avakian, this young, wealthy college radical who wrote for Ramparts magazine, he said, now is the moment. Now is the time. And he put out ads in all the radical newspapers of the country. And he said, come to Richmond, California. He said, because these oil workers in Richmond, California, they're on strike. They're up against one of the most powerful oil companies. I think it was Chevron. They're up against Chevron, this really powerful oil company. And these oil workers, they're working class people, low income, black, white, Arab, Asian, Latino, mostly white. And they're fighting the bosses. And they're battling for their union contract. And he said, now is the time. If we're going to have a revolution, it can't just be the college kids, can't just be the black community. It's time to go to Richmond. And he put ads in newspapers, The Guardian, the Berkeley Barb, Ramparts, all these magazines. He put ads in the magazines. Come to Richmond, California. And he said, now is the moment. We've got to make the radical movement a working class movement. It was his own version of out of the movement to the masses. And Bob Avakian put up ads everywhere saying, we have got to get and support this oil workers' strike in Richmond, California. I remember talking to people that were communists in Cleveland who were part of the RCP. I said, how did you get involved? And this one older lady said, well, me and my husband, we'd just gotten married. We were both reading about communism. And we saw this ad in the Guardian newspaper, the Maoist communist newspaper that we read. And it said, now is the time. You got to come to California. And so we did. We mortgaged our house. We packed up our belongings. We went to Richmond, California. There are other people I heard. And they said, yeah, we saw that the country was in flames. We realized that communism was the answer. And this guy, Bob Avakian, he put out ads everywhere and said, now is the time. We need you to come to Richmond, California. And he got hundreds of people to come to Richmond, California to support the oil workers' strike. And that was kind of what laid the basis for the Revolutionary Union, which was the group he started, the Bay Area Revolutionary Union, and eventually the Revolutionary Communist Party. And if you read, he wrote a summation. This is the article he wrote about the role they played in the oil workers' strike against Chevron. And I'll drop it in the chat. You can read for yourself. He talks about how he got these college radicals to be out in the streets in support of the oil workers. And when a scab truck would try to pull into the Chevron plant, these college kids would throw a brick through its window and smash its window. And he talked about how these young college radicals, they became kind of the fighting force of the union. These union workers, they had wives and kids. They didn't want to get arrested, but these college kids, they had nothing to lose. So they became the street fighting group to support the union in Oakland, California, or in Richmond, California. And Bob had this ability to get people pumped, to say, now is the time. Go, go, go. Now is the time. Richmond, California, these oil workers are on strike. We know that the black community can't make a revolution by itself. We know the college students can't make a revolution by itself, but these oil workers, they're fighting. And so we got to be the strong arm on the picket line to support these striking oil workers. And with his passion and his charisma, he mobilized hundreds of people to go to Richmond, California to support the oil workers' strike. When I read this story, it hit home with me, but I'll get to that later, because that's not the only time. That is not the only time that Bob Avakian did that. A couple years later, he decided he wanted to form a national anti-imperialist youth group that would support the Vietnamese. So he put out this call. Now, I'm going to drop it in the chat here. Read the leaflets for yourself. These are the actual leaflets that Bob Avakian and his people put out. Early 70s, to form the Attica Brigade. After the Attica uprising at Attica State, the Attica prison uprising, he said, we need to have a national pro-Vietnamese, pro-communist youth group on the college campuses. And so he wrote this call for a national conference to form the Attica Brigade. And they had their convention in Iowa City. You can read about it. And what does the headline here say? And I'll read you. I dropped the link in the chat. The time is now to build a call to the Attica Brigade National Convention. All right? You look at it, it's this revolutionary document that we need to form a national anti-imperialist group that's on all that. We call ourselves the Attica Brigade to commemorate the unity, militancy, and determination of brothers that rebelled at Attica State. We saw the need to take the energy, anger, and understanding that students had developed and join together so that we could do more than just react, dissolve, and react again. We saw the need. We needed an organization that could bring us together with clear principles, support for the national liberation struggles as exemplified by the Vietnamese, support for the struggles of the oppressed people at home. We're unified on the fact that the attacks both at home and abroad come from one system, from U.S. imperialism. We understand the need to build one organization that can unite all students in struggle, Black, white, Latin, Asian. We need to meet together to discuss our work so that we can learn and gain strength from what was going on different campuses and not get demoralized. You read it. Now is the time for all of us to get together, members of the Attica Brigade, independent anti-imperialist student groups, independent student progressive students. We have to talk about the struggles we've built. Yeah. Look at it. And again, when he's forming the Attica Brigade, he gets into this hysteria. And they send a letter, ads in the newspapers. Now's the time. We're going to do it. We're going to build this national student anti-imperialist organization. Let me show you if I can show you some pictures of the Attica Brigade. There's a neat graphic of the Attica Brigade. I used it in my bread tube book. Let me see if I can find it. I'm going to see if I can find the picture for you. Yeah, here it is. Here it is. All right, this is a picture of the Attica Brigade. I'm going to put it on the screen here. Hold on. Hold on. We are going to put it on the screen here so you can see this revolutionary anti-imperialist organization that Bob Avakian and his people built. Hold on. Hold on. All right, we'll just put it here on the screen so you can see it. Hold on. There you go. It says, right on, take Saigon, Attica Brigade, right? They're cheering for the Vietnamese. They got that red star there. Right on, take Saigon. Nixon with a swastika, stop the war, stop the bombing. It's this organization he built. Right? The Attica Brigade. And if you read the calls that I just put in there, full of passion, full of energy. Now is the time. All right, what's the headline? The headline on the leaflet to form the organization. What does it say? It says, I got to go back up to the top here. What does it say? It says, the time is now. Iowa City, June 15th, 16th, and 17th. That's what it says. Right? It's full of passion, full of energy, full of, we're going to do it now. Just like he got all those people to go to Richmond. And he said, now we got to go to Richmond and support those oil workers. And he got hundreds of people from around the country to come, hundreds of these college radicals, not to go to Berkeley and not to go to Oakland, not to go to some hipster place, but to go to Richmond, California, Richmond, a working class city, and fight on the picket lines with the oil workers. And then he builds this national youth group, the Attica Brigade, an anti-imperialist group. This is serious energy. And when I read the history of the Revolutionary Communist Party, I read this book. There's a book called Heavy Radicals, the FBI's War Against America's Maoists. And I read Threat of Greatest Magnitude about FBI infiltration of these groups. And I've read the documents you can go read on the Marxist Internet Archive, Encyclopedia of Anti-Revisionism. You read their documents. I got it. I finally understood it. Because I had been around the Revolutionary Communist Party briefly when I was, 19, college age. They were the first communist group I was around. And one thing about them was they had that energy. They had this go, go, go spirit about them. Every day they would call me, let's go sell the newspaper. Let's go sell the newspaper. Let's go put up posters. And they had this go, go, go attitude. And I remember when I was around them, they were having a national day of action to drive Bush out of the presidency for the impeachment of Bush. And they pumped us up. And it was like we thought this was going to be a big moment, right? And we were postering and we were preparing, and it had this go, go, go energy about it. It was, we were, and I remember they had a bus tour to build for their national protest. And I remember they had like a bus that was going from city to city. And they had this bus full of young 20-year-olds. Wasn't a big bus. They were like 7 or 8 people on the bus. It was this little bus that they were driving from city to city to build support for their movement to drive out Bush. And, I remember when the bus came to the area that I was in. The bus came, and it's really funny. The bus came to Ohio where I was, and we met up with them, and they were there. And it was like, some, early 20s young people that were RCP supporters. And there was this Russian girl on the bus. And she was like 15, 16 years old. And so I was talking to her, and I'm like, wow, you're from Russia? And she's like, yes, yes, I am from Russia. You know, I came to America to stay with my aunt and uncle for the summer. And there is communists. They come to the city. So I get on the bus with them. You know, and she was this 15-year-old girl. And she was just like, she'd been staying with her relatives in the United States for the summer. And she saw there was a group of communists going from city to city to drive out Bush. So she got on the bus. Why would she not get on the bus? You know, and they were going from town to town, and they were just like, we got to build a mass movement to drive out George W. Bush. He's a fascist. He's leading us toward fascism. You know, years and like 2 years later, I was at an anti-war protest, and I saw that Russian girl. And I said, hey, weren't you the Russian girl I saw on the bus with the RCP people? She says, yes, that was me. Yes, I was on the bus. Yeah. And I said, what happened? She said, these people are crazy, Caleb. They are crazy. And I said, what do you mean? She says, we are driving down the road. We are just listening to speeches of Bob Avakian. All day long, we are just listening to speeches of Bob. We not listen to music. They're crazy. It was funny. And we had a good laugh about how intense the RCP could be, because they were an intense group of people. But that was what held them together. Maybe she was German pretending to be Russian. I don't know. Maybe she didn't sound like that. Maybe I'm just doing a stupid voice on my live stream, and we laughed about it. But, you know, that was their strength, is they had this go, go, go attitude. Do it now. Do or die. You know, I mean, and they had this passion. And I loved that passion about them. I didn't agree with them. You know, they thought Cuba wasn't socialist. They were neutral in the Iraq War. They were against both the Iraqi resistance and the U.S. imperialists. They said they were two outmoded systems. I couldn't agree with their political line, but the passion I could agree with. And that was what kept the group together. And that's why all of those Maoist communist groups have fallen apart. All of them, right? All of those Maoist communist groups from the 70s, the Communist Workers' Party, the October League, the Communist Labor Party, they've all fallen apart. But RCP is still here because they had that energy. They had that energy. They had that ability to just be like, go, go, go. We're going to do it now. We are going to get something done. And they would pick a day. October 5th was a day that they had. I remember when I was in the group and they said October 5th will be the beginning of the end of the Bush administration. And we were out all night postering, and we were putting up leaflets, and we were go, go, go. And that go, go, go energy, it came from the top. It came from the top. And in fact, I read, this is a horrendous document. I mean, if you want to read it, 78, the Revolutionary Communist Party split. Right? There was a split in the Revolutionary Communist Party. And the people who quit the Revolutionary Communist Party, they wrote this horrendous document called Red Papers 8. I'm dropping it in the chat. It's a matter of public record. And if you read it, there's all kinds of attacks on Bob Avakian, all right, the leader of the Revolutionary Communist Party. And they attack him and they say he's mentally ill. He's mentally ill. And they say he's psychologically unwell. He's psychotic. Well, you know what? It looks like that psychosis made the group do some good shit. You know, people that are former members, people that were around, they said that Bob Avakian, they said he had bipolar disorder, which is interesting. And they said when he was in his mania, he wouldn't sleep for days, and he would just be full of this energy. He would be full of this energy. And that the group of people would be lit up by that energy, and they would want to go, go, go. And that's how they built these huge protests to end the Vietnam War. That's how they got people from all over the country to go to Richmond, California, you know, to support the oil workers' strike. It makes me think about Napoleon. Maybe you didn't know this, but you know what Napoleon was called by his enemies? This is fascinating to me. The Austrians, who hated Napoleon, the British, who hated Napoleon, you know what they used to call him? They used to call Napoleon the 100,000 man. The 100,000 man. Why did they call him that? Because Napoleon was a man full of passion and energy. He called himself the Revolution in Boots. He said he was going to march the gains of the French Revolution across Europe. And that this one man who was kind of short, 5'2", wasn't very tall, this one man, the little corporal, Napoleon Bonaparte, his passion lit up 100,000 people. It was his energy that held this army together. He was the 100,000 man. His energy pumped up this whole army of 100,000 people to march across Europe. And whatever you want to say about Napoleon, an authoritarian, evil, brutal guy, it was this energy, this passion that burned through Napoleon. He was going to march the gains of the French Revolution across Europe. He was against feudalism. He was against the oppression of peasants. He wanted to expand the ideals of the French Revolution across Europe. He was the 100,000 man. The 100,000 man. You think about it, the reason the Revolutionary Communist Party is still around, the reason that they swelled to be this huge communist organization is because whatever Bob's flaws, whatever flaws they had in their political line, Bob Avakian was a 100,000 man, or maybe a 10,000 man. But he had this ability to light up the organization. And I remember that even decades later, even in the 2000s, 2005, 2006, when I was a college kid, when I was around them, even then they had that energy. They said October 5th is the day, and they would get this energy and they would be like, go, 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 go. And it came from the top. Bob would decide, you know what? Now is the time. We are going to build a national protest to drive out the Bush regime. And the whole group would build on each other's passion, build on each other's energy. I see there's somebody in the rock fin. Would you agree with people who say that Jesus was a socialist or had socialist tendencies? I'll put that in the chat. I thank you, Chris Leon, for your super chat. Much appreciated. I'll be writing that down. Thank you. Super chats are appreciated on all platforms. And that was the passion. That was the passion. That was the ability that the Revolutionary Communist Party had. And they attack Bob in this document, this Red Papers 8. They attack him for being mentally ill. But maybe you need mental illness like that to build a very powerful organization. If Bob was just your normal, average person who just went through life, oh boy, would they have been able to pull off the kind of things that they pulled off? Would they have been able to get hundreds of people to move to Richmond? Would they have been able to build the Attica Brigade into a national group? Would they have been able to, build a group of 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 people? You needed a guy who was a little bit unhinged in order to do it, because the passion that he exuded was able to empower other people. When he was passionate, it got other people to be passionate. And when other people got to be passionate, they could get, and it went down the line. And he could get that whole organization whipped up into a hysteria. Go, go, go. Now is the time. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. Wherever Bob is, I take my hat off to you, good sir. I take my hat off to you, because we need people who can do that now. More than ever, we need that now. We are in an age where people are wallowing in pessimism. We are in an age where people don't have energy. They don't have hope. They don't believe in anything. They sit around hopeless. We absolutely need. I'd have him on here in a heartbeat. I would have him on here in a heartbeat. I doubt. I think the chances of Bob ever coming on this stream would be 1 in a million, but I would have him on here in a heartbeat. If you're watching, Bob, if there's a chance you're watching, you can come on anytime. Shoot me an email. I'll have you on anytime. But, you know, that's beautiful. And despite all my criticism of the RCP, I don't agree with them about Trump. I don't agree with them about the Soviet Union or China and all of that. That energy, that was the strength. That was the strength that held an organization together. And when I read these articles about what he did with the Attica Brigade, what he did in Richmond with the oil workers' strike, I understood it. I understood it. And I don't see anyone playing that role at this time. Nobody. I don't see anyone playing that role in this time. Nobody. I don't see anyone in this time who's telling people, you know what, there's a war. There's a danger of a new world war. Now is the time. We got to pile into Washington, D.C. and protest the danger of a new world war. I don't see anyone who's saying capitalism has crashed. The masses are ready to fight. Now is the time. Now is the time to go and build a revolutionary organization, to get out of the movement, get to the masses. I don't see anyone doing that. Sometimes you need a fanatic. Sometimes you need a fanatic. If you had a heart attack today and they were rushing you to the hospital, imagine that you just had a heart attack. They're rushing you to the hospital. And as you're being rushed to the hospital, you're in that ambulance. The person says, now, when you get to the hospital, sir, we have 2 doctors who can treat you. One of the doctors is a normal guy. He's level-headed. He got average grades in medical school. He has average grades, and he's just an average normal guy who lives an average life. He's got an average group of wife and kids, and he can probably do the job. He does a decent job as a heart surgeon to save your life. But imagine then they said, but you can see this other guy. And this other guy is a fanatic. This other guy is obsessed with being a heart surgeon. This other guy stays up for days practicing being a heart surgeon. He got straight A's in medical school. He doesn't have a wife. He doesn't have kids. He's obsessed. Every moment he spends figuring out how he can be the best heart surgeon ever. This guy's a lunatic, fanatic heart surgeon who knows exactly how to do his job. He studies and obsesses and thinks about doing his job. He is the president of the International Heart Surgeon Association. He is the editor of a magazine all about being a heart surgeon. He has a YouTube channel just for other heart surgeons to learn how to be a heart surgeon. Do you want that guy to do it, or do you want the normal guy? You would be a fool if you said, oh, take me to the normal guy. No, you'd say, I want that fanatical heart surgeon, that heart surgeon who lives for heart surgery, that heart surgeon who's obsessed with heart surgery, that heart surgeon who knows it better than anybody else. That's who you'd want to operate on you if your life was on the line. Let's be real. You would want the fanatical doctor. And maybe that guy would be weird. He wouldn't be the kind of guy you'd want to have a beer with, because all he would talk about was heart surgery, and that would get a little boring, especially if you're not a physician yourself. But if your life was on the line, you would want that fanatic to treat you. Let's admit it. When the time is right, you would want that fanatic to treat you. And right now, I would argue that this country is in a serious crisis. This country's in a serious crisis. No, we don't need normal politicians. We don't need Joe Biden. Okay. Whatever you want, man. Chill, dude. We don't need that. We don't need Mitch McConnell, Yertle the Turtle. Okay, I'm Mitch McConnell. That's not what we need. We need a 100,000 man. We need somebody who's obsessed to get us out of the crisis. We need fanaticism. That's what we need. We're in the danger of a new world war. We're in a crashing economy. Living standards are dropping. We're zooming toward a low-wage police state. Now more than ever, we need fanaticism. These are not normal times. Do you think your college degree is going to matter if the nuclear war happens? Do you think if this country becomes a low-wage fascist state that it's going to matter? It's going to matter whether people laughed at you on Facebook or not? Do you think that if this crisis escalates and we end up living in woke fascism, that people are going to be like, well, geez, I wish I hadn't tweeted against it. I wish I hadn't gotten canceled on Twitter. Do you really think? I mean, now is the time. Now is the time. Now is the time for fanaticism. Now is the time for people with whatever mental illness Bob Avakian had that makes him go, go, go. Whatever pissed off those people who wrote Red Papers 8, whatever it is, that's what we need now. We are in an emergency situation. We need fanatics in America right now. We need passionate people right now. We need people that have energy, that are able to get other people to have energy, so that they can then get other people to have energy, so that they can then get other people to have energy. That's what we need in this time. We need people who are intoxicated with truth, infected with a slice of reality, who are saying, we will not let things continue as usual. I am going to put my body, my life on the line. I don't care if I get canceled. I don't care if people make fun of me. I don't care if I come across as weird. I am going to stop the war. I am going to stop the low-wage police state. I'm going to stand up and fight for the truth. That's what we need in this time. We need fanatics. Now more than ever, we need fanatics. We need people who are ready to let it all go, let it all rip. That's what we need. That's what we need. And despite all of the Avakian's flaws, I get it now. I get it. I get it why there's a crew of people that stayed loyal to him year after year after year. As his group got smaller and smaller and smaller, there was a group of people who stayed loyal to Bob Avakian. And why was it? Because he gave them life. He gave them that passion. He gave them that passion. And we need that passion now. And they've done everything they can to take that passion away from people. And our culture right now, they have everything lined up to make sure people don't get that way. They've worked really, really hard to just put everyone in a pessimistic mindset, to pump everyone full of the belief that nothing matters. There's no hope. There's no reason to wake up in the morning. You really should just kill yourself. Suicide is a good solution. That's the situation. That's what they're doing. They're really scared. They're terrified that this kind of passion will emerge. This kind of passion scares them, terrifies them. Somehow this kind of energy could be exuded. Terrifies them. Utterly terrifies them. And that's what we need in this time. That's what we need in this time more than anything. And I got to tell you, a couple more things on this note that come to mind. Item number one. Item number one is that Friedrich Nietzsche was wrong about a lot of things. His philosophy is wrong. I'm reading some work by a good friend of mine. Shout out to you if you're watching. You know who you are, who went into Nietzsche, ripped him apart. I've read George Lukács and his critique of Nietzsche. Nietzsche was awful in so many ways, philosophical irrationalism, etc. But one thing that Nietzsche pointed out is he did take note of the fact that there are some individuals who are infected with this passion. And Friedrich Nietzsche, he had this obsession. He wasn't a populist. He was an anti-populist. But he noticed that some of the people who do the greatest things in history are electrified with this kind of passion. That's something he took note of. Now, he interpreted it completely wrong. He didn't understand what that meant. He didn't understand what Plekhanov makes clear in his understanding of what makes people great is that they give expression to feelings and sentiments that are among the broad masses. They become a voice, a vehicle through which history expresses himself, right? Expresses itself. Nietzsche didn't understand that. He had a very individualist, anti-communist, libertarian perspective. But one thing that Nietzsche said is he said, one must be filled with chaos to give birth to a dancing star. What does that mean? One must be filled with chaos to give birth to a dancing star. What Nietzsche was observing was that those who make history, those who get things done, often they are filled with chaos. Often they are filled with intense passion and emotions. And it's channeling those intense passions and emotions, not letting them just run rampant. It's a process through which the chaos solidifies into something so strong and powerful. That's the process through which great art is created, great scientific discoveries are created, great mass movements are built. It's a process through which the chaos becomes solidified into energy. Chaos by itself is just bouncing around and going crazy. But there's a process through which the chaos becomes concentrated and directed into one spot. And then it hits. It hits with power. And that's how beauty is created. And he's right about that. If chaos just remains chaos, it has no strength. But when chaos becomes concentrated and controlled, then it turns into a heavy power. And it's unstoppable. One must be filled with chaos to give birth to a dancing star. However, that chaos must transform into order. Right? Nietzsche also said, out of chaos cometh order. Meaning that the universe, there's a constant push and pull in the universe between chaos and order. The universe functions according to objective laws. Gravity exists. Time exists. Mathematics is unchanging. But, the history functions according to an order. There is an order. And Marxism is very much understanding the objective laws of history. But there's constantly a pushback against that chaos. And there's constantly a pushback against that order. Right? That order is constantly being challenged. Right? In the Bible, one of the Gospels, I believe it's the Gospel of John, says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. And if you look at the translation, it's very strange. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. Well, the English translation is a little bit off. It says, in the beginning was Logos. In the beginning was Logos. And Logos is the Greek word for order. In the beginning was order. God represents order in the universe. God represents mathematics. God represents gravity. God represents time and the passage of time. And what is Satan? Satan is the first rebel. The first rebel, right? He's the fallen angel who led an uprising against God. He's the challenger of order. And the idea is that the world and all the beauty of the world is Satan and God clashing with each other. It's the drive for chaos clashing with the drive for order. And the energy created by the chaos being synthesized into order. And when chaos exists, but that chaos is then channeled into order, the order that comes is so much more powerful. Out of chaos cometh order. If you just had regular order, it would get boring. But when that order is challenged, and when chaos challenges the order, and there's a clash between chaos and order, the order that comes out of that, when order triumphs over chaos, and all that energy created by the chaos is channeled into a powerful order. That order is beautiful. That order is beautiful. One must be filled with chaos to give birth to a dancing star. The universe is not defined by chaos. The universe is defined by order. But that order is constantly being challenged by chaos. And sometimes individuals come along who have chaos within their souls. But they are able to channel that chaos into order, and that order is explosive. That order is explosive, that order is powerful, and that order does things. That order does things that almost seem like miracles. Go and read the work of Anna Louise Strong. Go and read about what Stalin did, how he turned the Soviet Union from an impoverished country into a superpower, raised millions of people out of poverty. Think about what China used to be, what it is now. One of the greatest success stories in all of human history. Never has a civilization regenerated that rapidly. China has emerged from the century of humiliation to become the second largest economy on earth. So many people lifted up. How do you think that happened? Do you think that happened because Mao was boring? Do you think Mao Zedong, the leader of the Chinese Revolution, said, "Oh boy, I don't know, maybe communism's the answer, I don't know. Okay, okie dokie, maybe communism's what we need. Oh boy." Do you think that's what Mao sounded like? That's what you think Mao Zedong sounded like. Go and read the Little Red Book once again, my friend, because that is not what Mao sounded like. And if you think what Mao achieved was achieved acting that way, you know nothing about the Chinese Revolution. Mao Zedong exploded with passion. Folks, do you know what Stalin literally means? What does Stalin literally mean? It means man of steel. Do you think Stalin was like, "Oh boy, I don't know, maybe this communism stuff's right. I guess we gotta fight the Nazis. Come along, fight the Nazis, all right." Why do you think that they still have such admiration for Stalin in the in Russia today? They don't even have the government doesn't believe in communism. Communism's been overthrown. The Soviet Union's been overthrown, but they do poll after poll after poll, and person after person after person says Stalin was a good guy. Stalin was one of the greatest leaders in our history. Why is that? And why is that? But Mao's picture is up everywhere. The Chinese Communist Party has repudiated the Cultural Revolution. They've said Mao was good until 1963, but after that, he went a little, they repudiate the final years of Mao's life. Doesn't matter. His picture is everywhere. They're reading the Little Red Book. They're having a Maoist revival now in China. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? Russia's not going to go back to Stalin's policies. China's not going to go back to Mao's policies, but they're going to go back to that passion. They're going to go back to that energy. They're going to go back to that strength that they got from that era. That's what they're looking for. As the imperialists are coming for them, they're drawing up the spiritual power of Stalin. They're drawing up the spiritual power of Mao to defeat the imperialists. They're saying, Mao, keep your Cultural Revolution. We don't want that. Mao, keep your dogmatism. We don't want that. But that energy you had, Mao, the man who told us that a single spark could light a prairie fire, that's what we want. Stalin, keep your gulags and your purges, but that ability to rally the country to defeat the Nazis, that dizzy with success speech that you gave, those 5-year economic plans, the way you went around giving medals to people for working so hard, that Stakhanovist spirit, those patriotic songs you got us all to sing, that's what they like. The spiritual power that you find. When I realize all of this, this is why I have to reject atheism. I can't be an atheist. Because there's something more to it than just material laws of history. There's something more to it. When they talk about Napoleon being a 100,000 man, it wasn't just something that we can prove with a mathematical formula. If there's anything we can learn from all of the problems of the Revolutionary Communist Party, I don't agree with them. Don't agree with them on practically, other than a vague support of communism, there's not much I agree with them on. But I understand why they're still around, and I understand why they have so much power, why they had so much power and influence at one time. It's because they tapped into this passion and energy. And I've got to tell you, if we can't have that passion and energy, there is no hope. We have to be able to get that energy in this time. And if you want to see a better world, and if you want to be a good communist who gives yourself to the struggle and plays a role in history, if you want to be more than a left book loser, if you want to be part of a real community, a real family of people that are organizing and resisting and building something, you need to find that passion within yourself. You need to go deep inside of yourself. And the part of you that is a fanatic, and the part of you that is filled with energy, the part of you that wants to be strong, that wants to give your life to something, the spiritual power within you, you have to grab that and let it flourish. And the part of you that says, everyone's going to laugh at you, ignore it. And the part of you that says, I'm not good enough, I can't do it, ignore it. And the part of you that says, oh my God, what if it doesn't work out? Ignore it. We need you. You watching this right now. We need you to discover the spiritual power and strength within yourself. And we need it more than ever. We need you more than ever. We need you to be a fanatic. We need you to be self-sacrificing. We need you to say, now is the time. We need you. to stand strong. This is what has always made revolutionary movements powerful. I tell the story of the Flint sit-down strike, 1937, the auto workers in Flint, Michigan, they were on strike. The story goes that John L. Lewis, the leader of the miners' union, he went up to Flint. He walked in front of the plant and he ripped his shirt open. He said, "If they're going to shoot anyone, they're going to shoot me." We need some of that. We need some of that. We need some of that. That's what we need. We need that in our time. And you need to find that within yourself. And younger people, it's a lot easier for you. I'm 34. In 4 days, I will be 35 years old. So it gets harder as you get older. But older people still have it. There's plenty of passionate older folks, but it gets harder as you get older. But when you're young, when you're 18, 19, 20, you've got it. You've got it. Seize the time. Seize the moment. And that's why, whatever Bob Avakian's political disagreements are with me, whatever his flaws, whatever reasons that I realized they were not the group for me, Bob, I take my hat off to you. I take my hat off to you. And the people that trashed you as being mentally ill, they don't know what they're talking about. Because if you hadn't had that electrical energy, Bob, you wouldn't have been able to do all the good things that you did. So I take off my hat to you, good sir, despite our political disagreements. There is something admirable about you, Bob, and it's that passion. And I aspire to do, to some degree or other, in my own way, with my own political line, in our own time, I aspire to do what you did. And better. Right? I aspire, in the same way that you got people to pour into Richmond to support the oil workers, I want people to pour into Washington, D.C. or New Jersey or wherever we do our upcoming CPI event. I aspire to get people to move in the same way. I aspire to get people to organize and resist the wars and stand up the same way you inspired people. I aspire to be able to push people into motion, to get people to give their lives to something the same way you did. For a different political line, for a different purpose, at a different time. Sure. Sure, Bob. But that's what you had going for you. That's what you had going for you. And that's why you were able to do what you did. So I take my hat off to you, good sir.